To think in the 1920s, she's entertaining people in that house and maintaining that residence, and she is now in her 80s. That's a lot of work coming out of the 1800s. What is interesting, and you'll see it more in the next pictures, this lady's dress style. Here an elderly lady also has that drop-waisted style dress from the 1920s, but Anna is shirtwaist. The higher waist, simple collar on her dresses, same thing up here. And Rochelle, if you'd move to the next pictures, these are really getting into the last of the years for the family. Again, look at the length of that dress and high waist compared to these ladies. And you see that in different pictures over the years. Despite the style changes from 1900 to about 1930, there were a number of ladies of a certain age who just did not transcend all the changes. Their dresses stayed longer. Her collar is very stylish, just like the lady next to her. But the rest of the dress is pretty much cut like the dresses she was used to wearing for the last many years. Interesting to note, you can see she's getting along in years here. This is probably the early to mid-20s. She's in her 80s. These same ladies posed with her some time later. I would guess it to be 10 years, and Anna's now in her early 90s. This lady is right here. You just tell it by her facial gestures, and this lady is here, and this lady is here. And they're very, obviously very close to her, the way they're posed and the way they're close to her. The pictures did not have anything on the back. I don't know if Bill has anything.
I suspect they're probably some of Moses' relation.
Mm-hmm. This is in the dining room in the 1930s. Anna is right here, 1936. So this would have been taken very shortly before her passing.
Probably one of her last pictures.
Very congenial looking group of people. They're very happy. They're posed in that setting. If you're familiar with the Octagon House, the sunlight is coming through the windows and shining on them. And that was still very important in photography at that time. The flash wasn't so greatly perfected. Speaking of the flash, I had to laugh recently. I was in a gathering where people were talking about, remember flash bulbs, those little square cubes? And then remember after a while people used them in craft projects? Oh, you're all dating yourself like me. Well, we had a couple teens in the room that just could not fathom that you had a cube on the top of your camera, and every 4 pictures you had to replace the flash. And the smell.
Or Moses in the first picture?
In this right here?
The one on the left? Yeah.
It's not Billy.
No, is that more? That picture right at the top there would have been taken sometime after 1924, because that's when the porches came off.
Okay. Is that Billy?
No.
I mean Moses.
No,
No.
Moses died in about 1905.
Okay, I'm wondering if that's Billy down in the lower picture on
Yeah.
the left.
Yeah.
Right here?
Okay, yeah.
I believe that's Billy.
It looks a lot like him. Okay, Rochelle. This is taken, the picture was dated 1941. From the late 20s when Anna had really aged and Billy, through most of the 1960s, the house was pretty quiet. It was a museum. It was open 6 months of the year from 1938 forward. In the 20s and the 30s, Anna and Billy were very elderly, and although they received close friends and a few relatives, they could not entertain like they had once done. And the house was quiet, and it looks, I thought this picture really captured the quietness and a little bit of the loneliness at the Octagon House. But it was about to embark on a new career as a museum. And so if Rochelle will move us along. This set of pictures is taken during a Pioneer Days celebration. They took place, it was the late 1930s, wouldn't you say, Bill?
1941 and 42. It was about a 2
Okay.
to 3 year running period. It was usually in about June. And they honored the pioneer settlers of Watertown. They would come up and they would sign a document or a book that we have at the Historical Society saying how old they were, when they were born, and when they came to Watertown.
As he said, it only lasted a couple of years, and I would estimate that one of the leading causes of that was the war itself. It was harder and harder to find young men that could help to put all the equipment up and create the staging, and of course food items became scarcer, so the baking was difficulty. This gathering was shown a few years ago in a movie clip. I'm sure some of you remember when we showed vintage movies of Watertown from private collections. I will never forget, and you'll have to excuse my irreverence, but I will never forget when Bill said, "You've got to see this one movie," and plugged it into the TV, and it was this film clip of this gathering. And there were young people, I don't know, 10, 12, maybe 13, dressed in some kind of costume to look like Native Americans. And they were on this staging here, and music that was playing, the music that was playing had a kind of a sound like Indian music or Native American music, but it was set to a jazz, a boogie-woogie beat. And those Indian characters broke into a tap dance. And it had to be the most politically incorrect and insensitive performance ever in Watertown's history. I'm sure somewhere there was a chief in his birch.
Worse in Watertown.
It could be. We've seen some of those other pictures. But anyway, this activity in the early 40s were some of the first large public gatherings other than when the house was dedicated as a museum, and people were starting to learn that we had this item in the community as a resource and that it was a very nice gathering spot. And Rochelle, if you'd move us along. This is a scene from the movie Christmas on Grandfather's Farm, which was filmed in the late 50s. People that saw it got a chance to see inside the Octagon House. And you know, even today we're very amazed at the number of people who will tell us that they have never been up to the Octagon House. They're proud that it's in Watertown and they send visitors, but they've never been up there. This movie was the first time that the Octagon House got to go out to the people. And because it was filmed in some of the rooms of the mansion, people were able to get a look at it. And here in the background, this is showing the crew that was helping. And of course, Gladys Mollard, I want to point her out. She had done so much to preserve the house and to start the collections. The couple that did the grandparent roles did a very nice job in the movie. They really had a knack for portraying the love and warmth of a family ancestral home.
There, of course, is Esther Winogrand is on there. He's out in the middle there.
Which one is Mr. Bloor?
Down in the corner.
Here?
And Erwin Keepman was the grandfather.
Okay.
Carl Collada, third from the left.
Oh, sure.
That's him?
Yes.
Okay. Carl Collada, radio station for many years, for those of you who don't remember Watertown Radio. Okay, Rochelle. I think one of the first items that really helped to turn the house around again as a public gathering space was the gift of music. The Euterpe Chorus, and if you move us along, Rochelle, the Euterpe Chorus began doing an evening musicale every other year, and they started doing that in, well,
64.
was it 64? I was going to say the early 60s, but that's almost the mid-60s. Here we have Mr. Ben Feld, who is sitting with us tonight in the front row on the left, and the late Virginia Geyer, who was very active in musical circles. And this lady was identified on the picture as Elaine Kirst, who many of you know from St. Mark's, and she's still playing violin. In fact, she'll be playing violin on Thanksgiving morning while we sing. But that gathering, it was a wonderful way to bring people into the house, and the way they heard the music is just the way it would have been years ago. And Rochelle, if you'll move us along. In the last couple of years that they came up, they had young gentlemen in full tux, and they would escort the guests up to the front of the house. Here are some of the ladies in their costumes getting ready for the performance. They're posing in the backyard. Next. This is people quite crammed into one of the parlors. We move a lot of furniture and we put chairs up very carefully so that everybody gets to see into the front parlor, and it is not an easy feat, believe me. Here is one of the groups singing in the parlor as the people are looking on. It is Art Turk. And this is Pat Newberger, George Newberger's wife. And I do not know who this poor lady is. She's hidden. And this gentleman. I have a feeling this is Judy Zilmer, because I know Pat and Judy did a lot of music together. The next photograph shows one of the string quartets playing. I liked the lighting in this. It looked very much like oil lamps might have looked. And there's a harp in the living room. The Euterpe Chorus does other work in the community. They have not been up for a performance at the Octagon House in quite a while. I can tell you that it was really a treat to either watch from the side rooms, or even if you just stood in the staircase area, just to hear people singing in quartet fashion in the house. And the simple piano playing, no fancy electronic instruments, just simple music. Even in this case, these 4 strings, no amplification, just the simple, pure music. And it really made you think of how it must have been. Mrs. Richards did play the piano. Her piano is in the music room. So certainly they had some fun occasions in that house, and it's nice just to hear the music again. Well, as we move along, this was a fun view from our photo archives. This was a stagecoach that visited in 1971. They had come from Madison. There were some extra pictures with it that showed some of them in the house. The gentleman had a lot of big flowing capes on, and all of our guides were in different costumes. And there was some sort of a greeting. It doesn't indicate a lot about it. It was too early to do anything.
It did say 71?
Yeah.
Because in 70, it almost reminds me of, there was a certain thing that came through in 76 during the bicentennial where they did this.
When I first saw this, I thought too that surely it had to be the bicentennial, but when I saw the date of 71, I was just really surprised. But it's just a fun little look at some of the people that came calling at the Octagon House. Another thing that has proven to be very successful for us is food. It's always a crowd pleaser. And let's face it, in small communities, we don't just please the crowds, we make a few bucks at it. Or try to. So our first successfully, just goofy little children who suddenly discovered there was a crowd in here. One of our first really good successes at food becoming an attraction was the ice cream social. This is the house all decked out, ready for the ice cream social. The next view shows you the view from above. The last couple years, we've had it on the south lawn with the band up by the street, and the crowd gathered around the south lawn and then through the front of the house. When I first got involved in the mid-'80s, the band was on the north side of the house, and it was a much smaller crowd. It grew, I think in the 90s, we hit some of our largest crowds of 600 to 700 people. It's back down to probably 500 now. A wonderful Sunday afternoon gathering. Judy Quam, do you by any chance know about when the social started? I remember it off and on our things up there in the 70s.
I know it was in the 70s, and then there was a year or two when they were at the band.
Yeah, and getting 1st Brigade Band really proved good. And when they moved to Watertown as their home, we kind of used the way they interpretively read different letters from people. Helps you to really understand what was going on in our nation and for the young men in uniform and for their families back home. I did capture 2 other shots from the ice cream socials over the years. This one was Chris Hines getting a cake ready. This dress is something made out of a pattern from the State Historical Society from the time period of the Civil War. This cuff hides buttons for this lower sleeve, which can be detached in warm weather. And I wanted to show that. The other thing was I saw this picture, which was of Brian Quinn, Brandon Thompson, and myself. Yeah, a much younger me. More hair. My beard didn't come out of a bottle. And I know I weighed at least 1 pant size less. But the reason that I wanted to show this to you was not everybody has been up on the porches of the house, and this is what it looks like when you're standing up on the upper levels. We had just come through this window and are standing on the south porch looking over the band as it's playing.
I'm afraid you won't get on the porches anymore.
Nope.
Yeah, they're becoming not so safe. Isn't that right, Linda?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Linda put her best foot forward and
Went right through.
oops. Yeah, so it's unfortunate, but it's something we have to face. Now, another thing, when you study Civil War history and Watertown history, it's amazing what you sometimes uncover. And I know they talk about the Battle of Shiloh and Gettysburg, but in local Civil War history, we have the Battle of the Dueling Electric Knives.
They got really ugly one year.
Yeah. Mrs. Noon on the left said to Sandy, if you think you're going to have your cake and eat it too. And they were off and running. And I showed this for a couple of reasons. First of all, you know, when people see us with these costumes on and doing all the stuff we do up there, they just don't know that we have a total different side to us and that we have a lot of humor. So first you have to see that. Secondly, oh, go back.
Sorry.
Secondly, from a historic perspective, I don't even know if they sell electric knives anymore. But in the 70s, it was the tool to have, and I can remember one year for Christmas, we chipped together and got Mom an electric knife. Do you still have that? It's packed away someplace. Which means if I take care of their effects someday, I'll have